being recorded. And I start with my, the thing that really drives me to do anything and everything that I do in life, and that is my family. And I'd like to share with you this picture of my family, and all of them are Washingtonians now, because we made the decision, thanks to God, to make this our home. It was not a straight path, but of the people here that you see, Noshin, in fact, is attending as well. And Farzana is my youngest. She's a UW graduate, graduated last year. And Katie and her, I believe, graduated together. That stays in, who lives in Bellingham, works for the Department of Ecology, and she's my second one. That is Ryan Irfan, her hubby, who she met at Western, and these are her two kids. Noshin works for the South Puget Sound Community College right here in Olympia. And this is Seher and Adil, her two kids. And that's her hubby. He works for LNI as an IT specialist. And Ryan works for a company that works for Boeing. So, and that here is my wife of 40 years, my sweetie of 40 years, who has been my rock for a little longer period of time as well, and remains through thick and thin. She has been the glue that really bound us together and continues to influence our lives even after the kids are away from home. And right here in the middle, this photograph is from over around 5 years ago. You can see I have a little more gray hair now than I had before, but right in the middle here is the matriarch of our family, who joined us here in Olympia 2 years after we came. That was 20 years ago. And she passed away exactly 4 years ago today, on the 2nd of Ramadan. And she remains, she was an incredible individual whose genes, I think, permeate through all the 4 generations that you see in front of you today. That includes creativity, artistry, innovation, making do with the bare minimum that life had to offer. I'm sorry, I'm tearing up here, but I think she played a fundamental role in each one of our lives. So, and continues to do that through her spirit and through her genes. Even these little ones, I can see some things in them that they have inherited from my mom. So, this here is my travel radius. So the countries that I have lived in are in pink, lived and worked in are in pink. The countries that I have visited for work are in red. And the countries that I have simply visited as a tourist are the ones in green. So, for example, our first trip out of Kenya, my first professional trip out of Kenya in 1989 was to Botswana, where we lived and I worked for 4 years. Allowed us the opportunity to visit Zimbabwe, Botswana, and other countries around. And then from there, we moved to Egypt after a short break, and that allowed us to visit Saudi Arabia and Turkey and Morocco. And we went to Saudi Arabia for the annual pilgrimage as well. And I visited that a couple more times after that. And then from Egypt, my next, after 3 years in Egypt, our next trip, or my next assignment, was in Eritrea, which is this little country out here, just north of Ethiopia. And that's where I spent 2 years of my life, without the family. So the other two assignments I went with the family. So my children were there. The two elder kids were with me. In fact, when we went to Botswana, they were like 5 and 6 years old. And when we were in Egypt, they were, I think, going to high school. Noshin, I think, started high school there, right? Yeah. So that was as they went into high school, they went back. We all went back to Kenya, and when my next assignment came up, we decided as a family that it would be they would be dislocated from their curriculum and their school. So they stayed back in Kenya, and I went on to Eritrea for another 2 years. I'll give you a little more detail as we go through the slides, but after 2 years it was supposed to be a 3 or 4 year assignment, but after 2 years in Eritrea, Eritrea and Ethiopia went to war, and I was airlifted by the Italian Air Force and taken to Rome. So that ended that assignment. And a few months later, I was posted to an assignment in Pakistan. And all of this was with just the one consulting company. It's now called Arcadis. It's a Dutch consulting company based in the Netherlands. And so you see a red dot there. And their specialty was water and water resource management. They are big on water. And although I specialized in college in structures, I then went, I had a double major, water resources and structures. So this gave me another opportunity to do a bit of that, whilst Egypt was more of a blend of the two. Whilst I was on assignment in Pakistan, my sister, who had immigrated to the United States many years ago, and her husband is actually tuning in, Abid. They had sponsored us in the 1980s to join them as soon as they became U.S. citizens as a brother. And we had almost forgotten about it. And hey, presto, 13 years later, just as I was on the peak of my career with this Dutch company, we get a letter in the mail saying, well, you have to decide on whether you want to come to the US and take the United States as residency, and you have an year to do that. And that came in the middle of the assignment I had in Pakistan. So I gave my employer of 21 years a notice of 1 year to look for a replacement. As I said before, I had a very senior position. I was leading a team of 50 engineers on a multidisciplinary project, a World Bank project in Pakistan at the time. And it was a very difficult professional decision for me. But having visited the United States on a couple of earlier occasions, I said, well, the market in the US is hot for civil engineers. The kids are growing now to an age where they would be looking for college. Overall, throughout their lives, they had been in an international education system, and it would be very difficult for them to continue in the Kenyan system for university. They would have to spend a couple more years just to learn the language and merge into the curriculum that we had in Kenya. So we decided this is instead of having to get them go to colleges outside of Kenya, maybe to the UK or India or someplace like that offered an international curriculum. Moving to the US as they would be going into college would be an advantage because they would still be somewhere where we could be as well. So having those factors in mind, we decided let's take the plunge. So in 2001 is when we made the plunge. We took the plunge and moved to the US. And well, the rest is history. So I'll go one by one through the countries that we've lived and worked in. Kenya, most people see it as a destination for wildlife and beaches and places like that. Can anybody in the audience here recognize the mountain that's in the background there? You can unmute and make a guess.
Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro is correct. And which country is Kilimanjaro in?
Yeah, I've been there. It's beautiful.
Okay, awesome. So if you look at the map, Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania, but legend has it that it used to be in Kenya. And if you look at the map of Kenya, you will see a small kink just as where Kilimanjaro is. And it's said that in Victorian times, Queen Victoria, who was then the queen of colonial Kenya at that time, and I was born in colonial Kenya, by the way, but Queen Victoria at that time in the late 1800s, early 19, her cousin, the Kaiser, King Wilhelm Kaiser of Germany, was celebrating his 50th birthday or something like that. And she said she would give Kenya, Kaiser Wilhelm Mount Kilimanjaro as a birthday gift. And at that time, Tanzania was a German colony. And so what she did was redrew the boundary of Kenya and took it from Kenya to Tanzania. At least that's the legend. You can verify it yourselves. And so now Kilimanjaro is at the moment in Tanzania, but many tourists actually approach it from Kenya because Kenya has a much higher service level of service as far as tourism and things are concerned. So anyway, so this is some of what you would see in Kenya. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's really a world in one country, from east to west, north to south. The diversity of cultures, of topography, of weather, everything. It's just incredible. We have metropolises that may look very similar to what you would see in Western countries, but at the same time, there is the dichotomy of slums and, really difficult places to live in, almost next to where you would be living. So this, the picture on the left is Nairobi as you would see it now. And the picture on the right is a slum area called Kibera, through which the railway line passes, which was very close to, excuse me very much, which was very close to where we used to live in Nairobi. This is Mombasa. So Nairobi is my place of work. That's where I spent most of my professional life in Kenya. But Mombasa is where we were born and spent like 18 years of our lives there, both me and my wife. So this is Mombasa. Mombasa is an island on the coast. The picture you see in the middle is a typical old town. So very, very heavily influenced by Islamic architecture and culture. And the picture on the right is what you would see as, as a tourist on the beaches. We have miles and miles and miles of white sands, which are protected by a coral reef. So there is a very low probability that you get bitten by a shark. The coral reef kind of makes sure that most of those kind of experiences are kept at bay. And at the moment with COVID, of course, the tourism industry has all but collapsed, and you can get really special deals. So if you are thinking, if you've already got your 2 shots, I would encourage you to go visit Kenya. So next, I'll go back to the map to help you get your bearings. Our next step out of Kenya in '89 was to Botswana, which is right here in the middle of southern Africa. It's bounded by Namibia on the west, the Republic of South Africa on the south, and Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Angola to the east and northeast. The places that we visited were South Africa, Republic of South Africa, at that time, apartheid South Africa, and Zimbabwe. And we went over the bridge over Victoria Falls, just to get a glimpse of Zambia as well. So the next pictures you see are from Botswana. That's the flag of Botswana. The blue reflects the skies that you see. It's a very dry country, very low population, about just over 1 million, but they have a very large and growing immigrant population, mostly workers and professionals who come because of the thriving economy that they have there. The economy is driven largely by diamond wealth, and if I've ever seen a country's GDP in one whole, that would be the Jwaneng mine in Botswana, and it's several 100 feet deep, and the trucks you see here are about that size that dig up. It's an open cast diamond mine, and you can see the size of the truck as compared to a regular van here. On the right is the map, is an aerial view of Gaborone, the capital. Still a very small but very neat, clean city. But the place that really appealed to me, and we went on camping trips there, was the Okavango Delta. This is a very unique feature in the world. It's where the Okavango River that comes in from Namibia ends up in the desert of Botswana, and just spreads out as in a delta and disappears into the desert. So there is no outlet to the sea. The water simply infiltrates into the desert sands. But at the same time, right in the middle of the desert, it's like an oasis. So there is like about a 10-mile strip all around this delta that is plush and green. And this attracts wildlife. So it's a very concentrated place. It's a national park where you can see a variety of wild animals, from elephants to lions to giraffe, you name it, besides the waterborne life that you can get there. And it's crystal clear water. It's really a beautiful, beautiful place. If you ever happen to be to want to see something wildlife in a very concentrated area, this would be the place to go. And they actually have an airport that takes people directly from there, from many of the cities around the world. So we stayed 4 years here. My work here was, since Botswana was growing so rapidly, the infrastructure needed to be expanded by almost twice in the cities, and they were expanding 5 of the cities around Botswana. And we went there, Arcadis Euroconsult went there as management consultants, because you know, with all good intentions, the government had started projects all over, building infrastructure for the cities, and soon, you know, the designs were ready, and they gave out all the contracts to the different consultants. You know, there was the telecommunication consultant and the water supply consultant, and everything was private. The infrastructure roadway was designed by one entity, and you know, supervised by another. And soon all the contracts were ready, and they were put together and bid out to all the different contractors. So there was at one point in time, here was a contractor building the road. Then there was another one that came in and started digging up the road to put in the water. The telecommunications contractor was fighting with the electrical contractor, because they were on the same easement or the same right of way. And there were like 3 or 4 projects that had already started in this way. And the government thought, I think we need some coordination here. So that's when they sent out a solicitation for a project management consultant, and Arcadis was invited to do just that. And we were just a 4-person team, trying to coordinate and supervise this huge mega projects. There were like about 23 different projects in the 5 urban areas. And so the first thing that we said was, stop. You know, we made sure that there was a lead contractor and a lead consultant, and all the other consultants and contractors and contracts then were reporting to the lead. We redrafted the contracts, had them signed and approved, and then work then managed to continue. And for the new projects, we made sure that you know, the designs made sure that, you know, if water is on the right, then sewage is on the left, and utilities similarly. And the schedule was such that there would be as little conflict as possible when the thing went on to construction. So I'll just carry on, unless if people have questions, please raise up your hand, or unmute yourselves. I know we have at least one civil engineer here. Dave. Dave, it's a pleasure and a privilege to see you here. Thank you. So 4 years in Botswana, this was really one of our best assignments out of Kenya, still is. And we would love to go back there again and see how those cities developed. Anyway, from Botswana, my next assignment was in Egypt, which is right on the other side of the continent. And Egypt, as you know, as people see it, the first thing that comes to mind is the pyramids, and really they are a monumental structure, and you can see them from within the city as well, and you really don't grasp their size, because almost everywhere you go, you see the top of those pyramids looking at you, and even as you go closer, you just see the triangle shape is such that you really don't appreciate. If it was a vertical building, then you would see, oh wow, yeah, that's quite a monolith. But a triangle, somehow, you just can't appreciate it until you go right next to it and you say, wow, 150 plus meter high. So that kind of it was a wake up kind of thing, because you always see these pictures of the pyramids with camels in front of them and things like that, but they are not really, the parallax just doesn't do justice to it. But it's only when you're right next to it and you look at those piles of stones, and it just boggles my mind how these things were moved. Each one of them is anywhere between 3 to 8 tons. And when you go into the galleries, as an engineer, what just blew my mind was where within the structure of the pyramid, there are tunnels that take you to each of the different chambers within the pyramids. And those chambers, although the pyramid itself is made up largely of sandstone, the chambers inside are made of granite. And that granite is, the way it's finished and placed. I mean, each of these stones are slabs, are maybe about 8 tons or so, and they are placed at an angle inside the chamber. And there is not even a millimeter gap between, and they didn't have mortar at the time. They haven't used mortar. You couldn't even put a blade in there. And so you wonder, how the hell did they manage to construct this something like 5,000-6,000 years ago? It's just mind-boggling. As an engineer, this is just it's just mind-boggling. I know the American Society of Civil Engineers actually did a study on this, and they have come up with a possible plan. But really, as a civil engineer, I still think this is a miracle of mankind. If it was mankind, maybe there was some help from from outside. I don't know. Maybe a special prayer. Anyway, and typical traffic jams in Egypt. The minute you stop, there are kids who will come over and want to clean your windshield for $1 or for an Egyptian pound or a few pennies. It's really an amazing place. And the place where I really worked was not in Cairo. That's where the family was. That's because the family had to stay behind in Cairo for the kids' schooling. Noshin and Tizin were going to school, and they went to the international school in an island on the Nile called Zamalek, where the British International School was. But my assignment was in a small oasis just south of Fayoum, which is both which has both biblical and Quranic kind of references, because that's where Joseph diverted the water from the Nile for the I think it was 7 years of famine, and the Egyptians will point out the dam that he built to divert the Nile. And it's also there's also a reference in the Bible of Korah and the things that he did. He was not a very good person. So and the Quran mentions him as well, and he was swallowed by the earth with all his riches and everything that he owned. And when you go to Fayum, you can tell that something tectonic has happened there, because whilst the rim of the oasis is about 50 meters above sea level, the lowest point in the middle is about 150 meters below sea level. So something huge has happened there at some point in time. Anyway, our project was, there was already an irrigation system in place from the time of Sultan Muhammad Ali, who was of from the Turkish dynasty. He built quite a bit of infrastructure here, and it still to this day remains the breadbasket for Cairo. It's plush, green, and a very beautiful place to be. But water management is a big problem, because as water comes in from the Nile into these canals, the farmers living upstream get more than what they need, and the farmers living downstream do not have their share. So our project was to see how that can be managed a little better. And I'm really proud to have been part of that solution. However, if you live in Cairo, you live in a lot of noise, especially traffic noise, besides everything else that's going on. 5 times a day, the whole city vibrates to the call of the prayer, and it is a remarkable thing that's one thing that many people, including many of my Dutch colleagues who worked with me, that's one thing that they really take away from there is, that's what, although the early morning prayer, call to prayer, can sometimes wake you up a little too early than you would want, but it's something that remains with you for the rest of your lives. And when I meet them and when I talk to them, this is one thing that they find that they really, really had a profound impact on their lives. And it's something that they miss, because it's there every day, 5 times a day, no matter what's happening. And if you ever get tired of all the traffic and the humdrum and the stresses of life in Cairo, relief is not too far off. What you see here is what they call a felucca. It is a yacht on the Nile, and you can take a trip for it's not very expensive at all. Depends how big a yacht you want. But you can take a couple of hours on the Nile, and everything just dies away, and all you have is the water of the Nile and the breeze flapping of the sail, and you can meditate there. So that's one outlet that many Egyptians can get when they're in Cairo. Any questions, please? Yeah, raise your hand or say something. So after 3 years in Egypt, the children were back in Kenya with their mom, and I got the opportunity to go to that little country, Eritrea, just north of Ethiopia. And it had only been a couple of years since they got their independence from the big brother down south, Ethiopia. It was originally an Italian colony, and Italian culture and architecture still remains there if you go to the city, the capital city, Asmara, which is one of the highest elevation cities in Africa, I think, probably the highest, at 2,300 meters above sea level. And Massawa, which is on the coast, is just, I think, about 150 kilometers away. And you drop 2,300 meters within the first 50, 60 kilometers. And Noshin and Tezin, they probably still remember those blind, what do you call them? Turnbacks. And people going around, and the roads are narrow. They're not like wide here. There's nothing, forget about shoulders or even barriers or guardrails. There is once in a while you see some stones, and if you're lucky you hit the stone. Otherwise you end up in a couple of 100 feet down in the in the valleys. But it's very picturesque. Eritrea touts itself as, what's the slogan? Their touristic slogan is 3 seasons, 1 country. And indeed, that is very true. As you move from Asmara to Massawa, you go from a very cool, temperate climate to very warm, humid climate. And when you Asmara itself is a small city. It has grown, a huge urban sprawl, but it hasn't grown very much because the economy has been very, very difficult with the politics that's going on. But they have also had a very difficult past, both during Italian colonial times and then Ethiopian colonial times as well. And they were at war for many, many years between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and they almost went to war again when I was there. That's why I was airlifted out. But it is really a culture. If you look at Eritrean and Ethiopian cultures, you wonder what's the difference between them. Because they have very similar cultures. Although they have many different languages, there are some common languages between the 2 cultures, and really politics has marred anything that they had in common. And I hope and pray that the direction that the 2 countries are going at the moment will bring them both together again, hopefully. The picture on the top right is Massawa. This is when Ethiopia and Eritrea were at war. You can see that bombed out building in the background. They have left that as a touristic place for tourists to witness what was the degree of damage and the suffering that Eritreans went through during their struggle for independence. Not too far from Massawa are a few islands that are very attractive, very touristic, and some of them are uninhabited. And we had the privilege to visit one of those. You go there by boat, and Noshin and Tezin remember this really well, I think, because we camped on the beach. This is the island of Desia, I think it's called. We camped on the beach. In fact, we slept on the beach, just open. And at night, when you go to swim, there is this plankton. It's called glow plankton, right? And when you swim, as you disturb the water, you see a trail of luminescence, which is luminous as you swim. And it's just an amazing, amazing experience that the children really, really enjoyed that, and it was a bonus because we weren't expecting that. Anyway, so that was that much for Eritrea. The next one was Pakistan. I was stationed in Quetta, as I told you before. That was the last project that I had, a World Bank project, a drainage project that was all over Pakistan. I was on the team in the largest province with the smallest population, Quetta. Quetta is the capital of Balochistan, an incredible place, an incredible mingling of different languages and cultures and traditions. It has been in the news recently. It was really beautiful until I left, but after that, after we went into Afghanistan and Iraq, this thing has had its share of the impacts of war there, and violence has spilled over from Afghanistan. That's the border of Afghanistan is just about 60 kilometers from here, and more than half the population here is the refugee population from from Afghanistan, and with it came some of the problems. So there have been bomb attacks and all kinds of shootings and things targeted, especially at the minority Shia community in Quetta. But it still remains a beautiful place. It's close to my heart. I made really close connections and family friends there. The family came to visit there as well. And some of the ubiquitous things about Quetta and Pakistan in general is how they adorn their buses. So what you see here is what you might see a typical privately owned bus, and I have no idea how the driver manages to see through all these stickers and paintings and things like that. But yeah, this is kind of a bit of a strange thing, I thought. But it's true. Also in India, you see some of this. Any questions? Okay. So now I'll switch gears into building bridges. And building bridges, with the kind of background and exposure that I've had around the world, I have always tried to, and sometimes have been forced to professionally, to see a common, to look for common themes between people, cultures, and issues of interest, to find that intersection between people that can bring us together. And I call it building bridges. I'm a civil engineer, and working for WashDOT, we build bridges around the state. But one thing I know about building bridges is that in order to build bridges, we do a lot of pre-investigations, right? We have to make sure that our bridges are built on a firm foundation. And as far as building bridges between cultures and communities and languages, is finding that firm foundation to build bridges with. We can't just say, okay, yeah, I have a new neighbor here. And next thing, shall we let our children kind of go have a night over there at the neighbor's place, and so on and so forth? What are we looking for? We would like to know what our neighbors' values are, and I believe that building bridges between people can be built once you know the values of people. It's the values of people that form the foundation of building bridges between communities. And in all my travels, I have not found more, I have found more things in common as far as our values are concerned than things that make us different. And so I would like to explore in any of my interactions those values that we hold in common rather than look for differences that we may have that put us, take us apart. And why did I think about this? Why am I so passionate about this? I'd like to share a few slides going forward. What time do we have? 10:50. Okay, we have 10 more minutes or so. We'll go through this fast. Any idea where this is and when this happened?
Is it the Seventh-day Adventist Church on 22nd and on the corner?
It is indeed. It's not the Seventh-day Adventist. It's the gosh. And for some reason, oh, there it is. It's the Jehovah's Witnesses Kingdom Hall.
Yeah.
So,
in Tumwater. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the Tumwater one, but 3 of their places of worship have been attacked in Thurston County alone in the past few years, and this one was burnt to the ground. Next, I think many people here would be able to spot that one. You know where that is?
Yeah, that's it. Isn't that at Temple Beth Hakfilo?
That indeed is Temple Beth Hakfilo, and vandalized in December of 2015. This may seem like a minor thing. The swastika on the statue, but besides the pain that it caused the community, it cost them a couple of $1,000 to get this out, to repair this, because of the kind of paint or ink that was used on this. And mind you, this was not the only synagogue. This is up north in Seattle in March of 2017. And there is more. This is the largest Muslim community center in Washington State, in Redmond. In fact, we have a very close connection with them. With this community is the Redmond Muslim, they call themselves the Muslim Association of Puget Sound. It's one of the most vibrant and active Muslim communities in Washington. If you've ever been to the mosque here in Olympia until about 10 years ago, the Imam here, Imam Muhammad Joban, is now the Imam at MAPS. And he was the Imam at MAPS when this happened. And this happened not once, but it happened twice. Once in November of 2016, and many faith leaders from around the city of Redmond and Bellevue, they got together and they endorsed a new sign. They put it up, they put their signatures in to say, to give their blessings and to say sorry that this happened. And guess what? A month later, the same thing happened again, just to tell us, right, that, yeah, you are being watched. We do not want you here. Any idea where that is? Still in Washington. So this is the Bellevue Mosque. It was also attacked twice, once in January and then in March. Both were arson attacks. And in March, it was totally gutted. And that's the shell that remains. The sad thing about these, some of these incidents is that if this had happened to a majority community, we would still probably remember, because it would have stayed in the news for a very long time, and you would have seen, day after day, week after week, headlines in the papers or, online to say, okay, this person has been, charged, especially if it happened to be somebody with a Muslim identity. Because anybody with a Muslim identity by default is not sick in the brain, but is a terrorist. But when it happens to a minority community, it hardly has any sustainability in terms as far as the news is concerned, and it evaporates from people's memories, such that it keeps on repeating, not just here in Washington, but around the nation. This here again is it was the site of the new Federal Way Islamic Center. The community had just bought the property. They had fortunately not moved in or made any huge changes, but they had already started praying there. And again, another work of arson. This happened in August of 2020, last year. This is really close to home. So this is the Islamic Center of Olympia, of which I'm a board member. And this gentleman visited us in March 2018 with some posters. We believe in Jesus as well, but this gentleman obviously feels that he wants us to believe it in some other way. So he pitched up there alone in his pickup truck, and was there during our weekly Friday service, which is the one that is most highly attended. Friday is our Sabbath, as you might call it. And he made it a point that every worshiper who was coming in saw that sign. He was there well before we started, and he didn't go until almost everybody was gone. On that particular day, we were doing a fundraiser, so we had lunch out there for people to buy, and the funds would go to the families kind of sponsor this, and the funds go to the mosque's upkeep. And on the other side of the poster, a very offensive sign, it's specifically kind of designed to infuriate and cause a reaction. And I believe that this particular gentleman was hoping that there would be a violent reaction, because if you look at it closely, and I didn't notice that, somebody pointed this out to me, right here is a camcorder. And so what he would have liked to do, I imagine, is somebody to come and confront him, and perhaps especially, be a little violent. And he would most likely have it recorded and put it on YouTube and say, look, this is what our Muslim brothers, our American Muslim brothers are capable of doing. This is what happens when you let immigrants, Muslim immigrants, into the country. And I've seen some of those YouTube videos, so I would not be surprised if that was his intention. Anyway, we did, because there was lunch out there, we offered him, I bought lunch for him and water and gave it to him, and he very kindly took it, but he did not move from there. We also kind of tried to communicate with him, but he was not willing to listen or anything. He had made up his mind and did not want to be confused by facts. Soon after this, we had this thing that circulated within into the community, Punish a Muslim kind of day, 3rd April. And we didn't think very much of it, to be honest. I totally ignored it. But then one of the community members got a very specific threat to the Islamic Center, and they reported it to the sheriff's department. And the sheriff very kindly came to the mosque and said there has been a threat to the Islamic Center. And so this is just to keep you aware. We have our eyes open as well, and we will come around frequently, especially during your service times. So, but it really unnerves you when community members get these kind of messages. They some people can get really unnerved. Whoops, sorry. For some reason. Okay. Okay, what I'd like to do is, this is soon after March, after the attacks in New Zealand. We had an outpouring of messages from around, from the wider community to our voicemail in the at the mosque. And I'd like to play you some of these. Just a minute. Oh. How do I disable this? Not sure. Let me see if this works. No. Oh, there you go. Okay. So this is not sure. Does it play? It's not playing. Can you hear anything?
No, I can't.
Okay.
No.
Oh. It is playing, but you can't hear it for some reason.
Did you share audio?
No, we did not. How do I do?
It's like share there's you can share sound in your sharing,
Oh, okay.
in your screen share.
Okay, go and screen share.
Should I do that, or?
You are a co-host. Let's see.
Where is the menu for sharing the sound?
You go to advanced sharing on the screen share, and you should see share audio.
I don't see the option of advanced sharing.
Yeah, either do I. Let's see. Would that do it? How multiple participants can share simultaneously, dual monitors recommended. I don't think that's it.
Okay, never mind. We'll just
oh,
continue without that.
okay.
Anyway,
Sorry.
we'll go back there. So we had an outpouring of support from the wider community, and also something quite the opposite as well. And a couple of them were really, really nasty and threatening. And so because of the threat involved, we informed the sheriff's department, and they followed up with especially one individual. And guess what he said when they caught him? Said he was drunk when he left that voicemail. Yeah, and I mean, he got away with it. So, but these kind of things, we don't share this with the wider community, but that's the kind of things that we get. We get these calls, occasionally, anyway, if not regularly, to an extent that we had to kind of just stop our voicemail. Okay. So I'm not sure. Oh, there you go. Okay. Another event that occurred soon after this was there was a target practice shooting from the road where the Islamic Center is. So this is the Islamic Center, and the face that you're watching here is the face that is facing Abernathy Road. So that's Abernathy, and it appears that there was a drive-by, and somebody just took a pot shot at one of the windows, and it hit there and shattered the window of one of the fire escapes that we have there. So that's another event that happened right here in Olympia. So what happens after these kind of things happen? When events like this occur, we have an outpouring of support from the wider community. People get together, they come to the mosque, and give us their support and stand by us. And this is for the community, for our community, for the Muslim community. This is really, really appreciated, and they feel that at least they are loved and accommodated in the wider community. But there is more, of course. We even have legislators. So that's Denny Heck out there, and I don't know if you know Denny Cadden of Interfaith Works. So we have really strong connections with the wider community. That's our Imam Sufyan. That's Rabbi Seth Goldstein, and that's a pastor from the Lutheran Church, and quite a few other notable people who would come to the mosque when things happen, to show their support, to reassure us that we are loved and we are accommodated, and you are part of this tapestry that we call America, right? But and the same the other way around. When the Pittsburgh attacks occurred, the Muslim community went to the synagogue, and in fact, I frequent the synagogue quite regularly on many occasions, to the extent that the rabbi says, "You come here more often than some of my own congregation." But this is really helpful, I think, for the individual communities. But what does it do, to prevent perhaps the next one? So I started an initiative with Interfaith Works because I felt that Interfaith Works is, number one, we are members of Interfaith Works. It's a very diverse organization. There are like 30 faith communities that are members of Interfaith Works. They have good influence both within the community and wider, even through the lawmakers as well. And so I felt maybe, this is a great platform to start an initiative that would be more effective than all of us as individual communities working to counteract this kind of hate. So I put forward 3 kind of principles that I shared with at one of the meetings. And that was, number 1, when something bad happens, to announce widely that an attack or impact on one community, no matter how big or small, right, would be considered an attack or impact on all, what I call the Nato Principle. This is what Nato works on. So I feel that what that would do would be to, when people see us as, small minority communities that nobody cares about, they would realize that the impact that their actions have are much more than just impacting that small minor community. The other thing I felt was necessary, especially important for small communities with very limited resources, is to share community safety protocols. And although the Muslim community has itself come up with some protocols, I think resources are limited. And so, and some of the more established faith communities must have their own protocols, safety protocols. And if we could bring all of these together and come up with some guidelines or information that could help also some of the smaller communities. And finally, to have a rapid response team that reacts decisively. Address the media, provide support, engage lawmakers, because this is where, much of it really starts from, is, from the politics of the, the caustic politics that goes on, and hold law enforcement accountable, whether it's a large community or a small community, whether it's a Black community or a white community, hold law enforcement accountable. And in addition to that, what we have done as well for the past 4 years is we have launched a couple of programs that were really very well attended until COVID kind of broke us down. We have an open house at the Islamic Center of Olympia every first Friday of each month, where people from the wider community, anybody is invited. You can walk in as you are. They are welcome to sit and listen to our service, which is bilingual always, and join us in prayer. After that, we have ethnic snacks and a presentation and circle time with the priest, our imam. And, we have made great connections and strides in terms of, sharing our values, because we feel that that's the foundation on which we can start building bridges on. So this is the Islamic Center of Olympia. I would just like to share a few things about the Islamic Center, on, where we come from and where we're going. We call ourselves an ordinary community doing ordinary things, but trying to do them extraordinarily well. And we go that extra step in, making us approachable. But of course, we are a very, very, very diverse community. We come, we are like 500 families, first, second, third generation immigrants. About 50% are Cambodian, from the Cambodian crisis. Many of the older folk here probably know the Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge, brutal dictatorships that wiped out a couple of million people. We know of the Jewish Holocaust in Europe, but few people still remember the Cambodian Holocaust. Those who have seen the movie Killing Fields gives some idea of that. So 50% of the community is made up of the Cham Cambodian Muslim community, who were specifically targeted by the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot regime because they refused to give up their faith. And many of the community members here, have the older ones especially, have seen their loved ones slaughtered in front of their eyes, and they have had a very traumatic past. However, they made the United States their home, and they started this community in a very humble and simple way, but they had the vision of a Muslim community. They set aside they bought a 10-acre plot of land in Olympia, in the Olympia area, Thurston County. And of that 10 acre, they set aside a 10-acre plot to build the Islamic Center, where the new mosque at the moment exists. And this happened like 30 years ago. You can imagine the vision that these people had. And now, people from a cross section of the Muslim community from 39 different ethnic groups that have ended up in the Olympia area can make use of this. So it's a very humbling experience. And the next few pictures will give you the diversity that we have within our community. This is one of the Eid festivals. It's one of the two big festivals we have. One is at the end of Ramadan, which will be coming at the end of this fasting month of Ramadan. And the other one is at the end of Hajj. And that here is my sweetie. So this is taken, and by the way, a large and growing population of Muslims in our community are people who are not born Muslims, but embraced Islam later on in life, including this gentleman here in the middle, who is Eastern Washingtonian, and embraced Islam when he went to Egypt. And he was so enamored by it that he spent a couple of years studying Islam, and he's now one of the teachers in the at our Islamic school or Sunday school. And so this is one of the First Friday open house gatherings that we have. And just a few pictures. Tezin, that's my daughter, and my wife. A few other ladies that came over all the way from Bellingham to join us on one of the First Fridays. That gentleman there is, whoops, I guess you don't see the my pointer, good heavens. Sorry about that. That gentleman there is our Imam currently, very well spoken, American born. And he's the gentleman who delivers the service bilingually. He was schooled in Saudi Arabia after his high school, spent 6 years there, and so he has a bit of both worlds. Karen Fraser was one of our honored guests, by the way. So this is what you would experience in one of our open houses, ethnic food. And when this is during one of the Martin Luther King days, people from Muslim community members from all over the states, all over Washington state, the Muslim community in Olympia would host them And on MLK Day, we would reach out to our legislators and, lobby for things that are important to us. And that gentleman here is our governor. We also engaged with the wider community. This gathering was following vandal attacks on Jewish synagogues, and the meeting was called by Senator, what's her name? Help me here. Maria Cantwell.
Okay.
Maria Cantwell.
Maria Cantwell.
Yeah, Maria Cantwell. We were, our imam was invited to open the Senate, the state Senate a couple of times, and he did his due diligence. I feel that influencing our children is one of the important things that we can do, because their experiences in childhood, I think, will to a large extent govern how they end up as far as their outlook towards their faith is concerned. So we would love to invite children from across the cross section. This here, if I remember correctly, was organized by the Unitarian Universalist Church. A group of kids kind of mixed, and we played games and all kinds of things here. That lady there is Noshin, who's attending, and these are her two kids. I should mention that we are a mixed family, Shia and Sunni. We come from a Shia tradition, and her husband comes from a Sunni tradition, and so we call these two kids Sushis. And we have close relations with law enforcement as well. They know us well, and we engage with them very well, especially on our special occasions when we feel that it is necessary, not just for our protection, but just to reassure the community that there is somebody out there watching our backs. So with that, I'm open to questions, concerns, ideas. Please open your mics.
Mustafa, do you want to stop screen sharing or in a minute or two so we can see
Sure.
people in the audience? And also I'm going to put something in the chat. So if you do want the recording of this, you can email me to request it.
Sure.
Or you can call the senior center if that's easier and leave a message.
Okay.
Or if you're a friend of Mustafa's, you could email him because he will have it as well.
Before we part, I would like to share a few words from our scripture, if that's okay.
Please.
But I think it's an opportune occasion for that. It comes from a favorite verse of mine from the Quran, chapter 49, verse 13. It says, "O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, so that you may know and learn from each other, not so that you may fight and despise each other. For verily, the closest to me amongst you are the ones who are best in conduct, most righteous." Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you again.